Here's the bright spot. At least Florida Atlantic doesn't have to play a triple option team anymore, or an option team in any way, shape, or form. That's good, right? Florida Atlantic Boys Day After Navy Edition, presented by Robes Law Group, ROBES, robeslawgroup.com. Personal injury lawyers, they are the presenting partner of the Florida Atlantic Voice. And FAU falls to Navy 42-32 in Annapolis. And now it's off to a bye week, the second and final bye week of the 2025 season. I don't know if it's necessarily a bye week that FAU needs or actually wants, but you'll take it to get healthy and take it to get yourself in a spot where you have a critical home stretch on the way, where you have room for one mistake that can happen with the record, or else you're not going to have any sort of bowl eligibility. And a man who took it all in and who hangs out with me every single Sunday. My routine is wake up after a couple hours of sleep. I rethink all of my professional decisions, my career decisions, because as I get older, the turnaround from late travel, getting in the door at like 3 a.m. to waking up and being productive, that ability gets lower and lower, but always a bright spot on my Sunday. He is like a human form of caffeine. It is Robbie Lastella, New Era Preps, for another Day After edition. Just before we really dig into anything, your thoughts on needing the bye week or not needing the bye week. I know that, injuries, got to get healthy. That's always a thing. That's obviously extremely necessary. But just from a standpoint of this team and trying to win football games and what they have shown you on the field, do you think that the bye week sort of stunts a little, and I know it's been 2 losses, but some of the momentum or some of the need this team has to get back on the field and not have to sit a week, just sort of lingering before they get back on the field again?
No, I think they need it. I think it's time. They need to figure out some things on both sides of the ball. There were definitely some highlights on both sides of the ball yesterday, but their inability to run the ball really stunted the offense. And then on the defensive side of the ball, obviously Navy, it's tough to say they struggled against the run, right? In my opinion, because the run they'll see when they play Tulsa or Tulane in the next 2 games is going to be completely different than what they saw against Navy. But at the same time, that was a performance very similar to Army of last year. In fact, if Navy had carried the ball 2 more times, they would have surpassed their yards total against Army last year. So not great, but you can't really judge the option based on that. But nevertheless, I think this bye week will give them a chance to, yes, get healthy. Whatever that means in the running back room, right? We don't know what Terrell is dealing with. Hopefully he'll be back here soon. And Jamari Sands still seems like he's, I'd say, gearing back towards 100%. He's definitely healthier than he was last week against USF, but it's definitely not the runner we saw week 1 just yet. And so hopefully this bye week will allow him to get there, and wherever Terrell's at, hopefully it will allow him to get healthy as well, because what the running back, like the run game in total, it's just not been enough. They tried to get Caden going on the ground yesterday. It didn't really work. It seemed like Sands was the lead back, and that didn't really work yet. So they got to find a way to get that run game going. If they can do that here in this bye week, all of it's right in front of them, especially after seeing UConn lose to Rice yesterday. Any given Sunday, that's what that shows you right there. UConn is a good football team. I think a lot of people looked at that game and scary, but then they go out and they lose to Rice, a team that FAU, they handled pretty fairly. So,
yeah.
It's all in front of FAU here. I think this bye week will give them a chance to hit that reset button, but they gotta use it in the right way. They can't get lackadaisical. They can't fall asleep at the wheel here because everything's right in front of them. They got a chance here to really, capitalize on this season and turn it into a big positive if they can get to 6 wins. So, and it's possible. We'll see if they can do it.
I have some homework for everybody throughout the course of this day after. Jump in the chat. because I'm curious. The chat for those of you watching live on Twitter and YouTube is open. Go ahead and send your questions to us, your comments, and we'll make sure that we get to them. And if you're listening to this after the fact, the podcast form, well, you can just reach out to me separately. I have a little bit of an assignment to you. What is the identity of this FAU football team? What is the identity of this FAU football team? And it's actually something I thought about a lot on the flight back from Annapolis yesterday, coming back down here to South Florida. I don't want myself and Robbie to give you what we believe the identity to be yet, because I want to hear from all of you. So jump in the chat. Just ponder it for a second, because I haven't asked Zach Kitley this, but I do think it's always a valid question, especially at this juncture of the season. You've played 8 games. You're 3-5. You're now sub 500 in the league at 2-3. But what do you think the identity of this football team is? Now, I am running out of ways to ask Zach Kitley the same questions every single week, because the way FAU loses games is the same every single week, right? They hang around, they stay competitive, but one side of the ball doesn't match the other side of the ball, and then things snowball. It happened against Memphis, it happened against USF, and it happened against Navy. Now, the last 2 games, it has been the offense that is not playing to the level of the defense, at least from an impact standpoint. And you brought up the rushing yards Navy had, and you're right. It is you can't just look at it at its face with this triple option offense that Navy puts out there and say, oh my goodness, FAU gave up almost 400 rushing yards. It's a little bit skewed, because that is the primary form of offense for Navy. It's very proficient. It's very overwhelming. They've now won 10 straight times as a program, which ties a program record using that triple option offense. And so you can't just you can't go by pure yardage. You've got to go by when you give your offense an opportunity to put points on the board. FAU's defense against Navy, they did enough to win. And I have no problem saying that. FAU's defense did enough to win. From the 7.5-minute mark of the second quarter, all the way through the opening minute of the fourth quarter, where Navy was given a very short field after a Dom Henry fumble on the very last play from scrimmage in the third quarter, that score remained 21-13. That entire time, FAU forced a turnover. FAU got 3 turnover on downs, including an absolutely epic goal line stand at the end of the first half where Brian Newberry and Navy tried to go full alpha mode and bury FAU before the locker room, and they stood strong, and they were only down a score going to the locker room. In that span, middle point of the second quarter to the opening possession or the opening plays of the fourth quarter, that score remained 21-13, because while FAU got off the field over and over and over again defensively, the offense, including a series where they started at the Navy 34-yard line, didn't put a single point on the board in that span. So you can focus on the FAU run defense, and it certainly has struggled at times this year. But this was much different than what Byron Brown did to FAU. This was Florida Atlantic after a rough first 3 series, figuring it out, getting tough, throwing haymakers, connecting with some hooks, and that defense gave this offense that puts up the type of numbers that FAU's offense does, gave them ample opportunity to draw level, to take a lead, to potentially win a football game. I think it's, to me, I think it's easy to say, Robbie, that the offense did not hold up its end of the bargain, and I think it's safe to say that has occurred now for a second straight week.
Yeah, I'd say it's the second straight game now. So against USF in the second half, they closed that game with 6 offensive possessions without a point. This game, they had 7 straight offensive possessions without a touchdown. Now, they were able to get a couple field goals mixed in there, but no one hired the idea of the Zach Kitley offense wasn't for field goals. He knows he's got to put the ball in the end zone. He said that after the game, frankly. Yep. And so that's why I believe this bye week is important. It's going to allow everyone to take a little bit of a step back, evaluate, okay, why are we having these? It's just the offense goes to sleep. They're unable to put any points on the board there. They start credit to the FAU defense. I mean, people are going to say we have no defense, yada yada. And I will say in the beginning of that game, it was looking that way. It was looking like missed gaps left and right. No one knew where the ball was going on the pitch. They put together 4 straight stops against Navy. You don't get that a lot. You don't get 4 straight possessions where Navy doesn't put up a point. And they had it was the same thing against USF. I don't know if it was 4 in a row. I think it was only 2 in a row going in there between halftime last week. But they had the ball last week in the second half with a chance to tie, and they weren't able to. And same thing this week. And so I know that bugs Zach Kitley. He is an offensive guy through and through. He wants to put those points on the board. He wants his offense to be high flying and be the reason his team wins, not the reason they're struggling, right? And so I really think this bye week is really it could help them, or maybe it's just that maybe things aren't working out. I don't know. We'll find out here after this bye week if they're able to kind of bounce back. I said it before last week. We've seen them do it this season. They've been able to, bounce back from a bad loss to FIU and turn that into a couple conference wins. They weren't able to do that bounce back this week. They had some positives, but I think this week will give them a chance to do it again and have a chance to kind of reset a little bit. And yeah, credit to the defense for stepping up and they did that against Rice. That's why I wasn't, entirely out on the defense in this game. I knew Navy was going to be a different animal. I knew, there was going to be some struggles they didn't have against Rice, but they were able to do similar things. They adjusted on the fly. I think that's something that's been important. Those in-game adjustments we saw from FAU, where they were able to kind of stymie Navy a little bit. And, you can't do that all game. If you did that all game, that'd be crazy, and you'd have one of the best defenses in the country. But Gotta find a way. The offense got to help them out a little bit. And I think if that running back room can get back to some form of what we saw early season, or I think it was first couple games, Jamari Sands was averaging like 6 or 5 to 6 yards a carry. Yeah. I'm not gonna give the meme moment there, but I think if he can get back to it, this offense will be in a good place. And add the fact that Caden Shields-Dutton, they've been getting him going each week. So even if Terrell is not back, I don't know what that situation is right now. KSD can kind of be that second running back now, but the key right now, in my opinion, get Sands back to as healthy as possible, give that offense a run game, and I think that'll help the offense get its consistency back. If they can do it, like I said earlier, it's all right there in front of them.
There are some individual, because this has become a trademark of Florida Atlantic, unfortunately. The inopportune timeliness couldn't be worse. Penalties or mistakes, negative yardage, and especially in a game that was as tight as this for as long as it was, these loomed larger than simply momentum killers against USF or momentum killers against Memphis. These legitimately, in the moment, potentially changed the trajectory of the game, what we ended up seeing yesterday. And again, jump in the chat. It is live. It is ongoing. And your assignment is, throughout the course of this Florida Atlantic Voice, let us know what you believe the identity of this football team to be. What do you believe the identity of this football team to be? Now, just briefly, before we go through those individual moments, Robbie, FAU in the first quarter had 139 total yards, 121 of that through the right arm of Caden Veltkamp, okay? In the second quarter, FAU 64 and then 51 in the third quarter. So if my math is correct, that is 115 yards combined in the second and third quarter of this game for FAU after putting up 139 in the opening quarter. So that right there, second and third quarter, total yardage combined doesn't even match what you were able to do in the first quarter alone against this Navy defense. And if that isn't just an overlying cloud hanging over a blanket over what ended up being the key component of this game, where the offense disappeared in the second and third quarter as the defense was throwing desperation shots at the body of Navy and hanging around and grinding away like that on its face. And there are more specific instances of this, more to brush with a fine-tooth comb. But let's just start there. The offense went away for 2 entire quarters. And you're not going to beat Navy with how few times you get the ball, because of how they're going to milk clock and how they're going to bully you, regardless of who you are on their offensive possessions. That's their entire offensive identity with that triple option. You have to maximize when you have the football, and FAU just did not maximize it at all, and they became their own worst enemy.
They hurt themselves there in that situation, right? I mean, they got behind the sticks. They had to settle for a field goal. They missed the field goal, which is even worse. I mean, obviously, it's not it's not the end of the world, but you got behind the sticks, which a lot, and that's due to the lack of run game. And when they get behind the sticks, it's really been hard for this team to recover this year. They haven't had that play to turn 2nd and 10 in the third and short a lot of times, and it's hurt them. So that first down, to me, I really want to dive into that statistic. I don't have it right now, but and see really over the last couple of weeks how much that has gone down in success rate with the lack of run game. Because in that second and third quarter, they had to drive 3 plays, -9 yards. They missed that field goal. After they were able to get a 16-yard completion there, they go sack on first down, 3-yard run on second down to make it 3rd and 10 and incompletion. Like that, those type of series, when they get to like a first down sack, first down loss, they're not able to recover. So, and then the fumble, the turnover bug really kind of came back a little bit in this game. It hurt them more than it did against USF. I think that tipped pass interception against USF was kind of pointless at that point in time. These were crucial turnovers, especially in a game that ended up being only a 10-point game. I know that was with the backups in and whatnot, but just showed that anything can happen there. And so I think, this was Brett Dewhurst's first time, and they said on the broadcast, and I didn't even realize this, but I think it dawned on me too that he mentioned it. It was his first time going against an option-based team as a coach. So
that came up in the production meeting on Friday night. That's how TV got it. It was explained, like Brett Dewhurst said, this is the first time I've gone against a triple option offense. Let's to me, forget the strip sack for a second. On third down, yes, it happened, and it led to a touchdown, and it's 14-7 at that point in favor of Navy in the first quarter. But to me, what we have seen become a personality trait, the self-inflicted wounds on that side of the ball on offense really began on FAU's final possession of the first quarter. So Florida Atlantic is at the Navy 7, 3rd down and 4. Brandon Hoke, false start, turns into 3rd down and 9. FAU incomplete. As Veldkamp was pressured, was looking for Wasim, threw it behind him, incomplete. And FAU, instead of 3rd and short, where because it's at Kitley, he probably goes for it that deep into Navy territory. Say if it remained a 3rd and 4 or a 4th and 4, but instead it's 4th down and 9. And so Kitley has to send out Garrison Smith. He hits the 30-yard field goal. But, and I said it on the broadcast, against a team like Navy, points are at a premium. You can't just play for field goals. And I subscribe to the Zach Kitley approach to offense. You got to play for touchdowns. You got to play for 6. And FAU had to play for 3 there because it didn't make sense to go for it on 4th and long. So that's the first self-inflicted wound, okay? So 21-7 in favor of Navy after they score on their opening possession of the second quarter. FAU ends up marching down the field once again. But what happens? 3rd and 3, Navy 15. That's right. Mauricio Hines getting his first career start, false start, and that forces Zach Kitley's hand again after an incompletion because Adam Clank, linebacker for Navy, was right in his face. Garrison Smith, another field goal attempt. That's good from 38 yards, and it is now 21-13 at this juncture, okay? So then FAU recovers a fumble. And this was a great defensive play from Florida Atlantic. You had Bryce Langston and C.J. Doggett on Blake Horvath immediately. You have to try and impose your will against this triple option offense. You've got to bull rush him, and that's exactly what happened. Horvath fumbles the football, and it's recovered by Gavin Marcelin. So you are now set up 1st and 10 at the plus 34 against Navy, down 21-13. And keep this score in mind because it stayed 21-13 forever in this game. And what happens? FAU starts 1st and 10, and Jamari Sands on 1st and 10 is called for a hold. Grabs the arm of a linebacker, is clear as day, and now you're 1st and 20. You're behind the sticks. FAU would gain a single yard after being behind the sticks. So that ends up being after recovering a fumble at the Navy 34. You force a coveted turnover, and Navy doesn't do that often. They've only turned it over now 6 times this entire season. That was the 6th, and you end up with -9 net on that possession, and you have to punt it away. You, after that hold, got out of the range of Garrison Smith, and you come up empty. That then leads to the long 5.5-minute drive in the second quarter that goes all the way down to the final 2 seconds, and FAU gets the stop going to the locker room. Before we continue on with offense squandering opportunities, that, Robbie, that may end up being the defining defensive play of the season for FAU. That is something to build off of, and FAU did in the third quarter continue to build off of it. But the goal line stand with Navy on that final play could have kicked a field goal on 4th and 2 from the 2. They burn their final timeout with 2 seconds left to go in the half, and Navy decides, no, we're Navy. We're stronger. We're bigger. We're more physical. We're going to punch you in the mouth. We haven't lost in 9 straight games. We're a service academy. We're better than you. And FAU answered the bell and came up with the stop on 4th down. Like, that's the stuff right there. That's inspiring football. That's effective football. Forget physically. From a mental standpoint, that is how you win football games. That is something to build off of. That's cornerstone stuff right there. And I hope, looking back, that defensive unit is wildly proud of what they did because that carried into the third quarter. That is overwhelmingly winning football when you do something like that.
Yeah, how about Dylan Williams? That was a heck of a play. I think he's
Absolutely.
really made some good plays for the defense this year. Has really stepped up at times. He's been real solid, physical, and solid in coverage. Like everyone, he hasn't been perfect, but I think he's definitely been a bright spot for the defense. And yeah, that's a big play for momentum overall and in that game. And they did build on it, but the offense, unfortunately, did not. And you know, credit to the defense for making plays like that in this game. I think they're going to need plays like that down the stretch. You know, they got to have it plays. That was another thing they talked about that they said, Brett Dewhurst said, is they haven't had those type of plays. That was a play that, you know, maybe early couple weeks, Navy scoring, taking momentum in the locker room. There they step up and make a play. It shows you're still fighting. It shows there's no – you know, even with the way they finished that game, we'll get to that, I'm sure. But you know, gotta take the bright spots where you can get them, right? I mean, these last 2 weeks, you're playing 2 teams that'll be competing for a college football playoff, and you're having bright spots in those games. Although both didn't go your way, both probably were a little uglier than you wanted at times, but you gotta just keep building on those type of plays and find a way to generate longer momentum, right? I mean, you make plays like that, the offense for whatever reason they're just not it's not clicking right now, and that's it. We'll go back to that, and that's why I think the bye week is good.
So let's go to the third quarter now. So it's 21-13. And again, I told you to put a pin in that score for a reason, because it was 2013 for a long time. It was 2013 through four. It was 2013 through four different possessions for Florida Atlantic in this spot. Okay. So you start the second half, and Navy has the football, and you force a turnover on downs, and you take over at your own 40-yard line. You march down the field. You have a 1st and 10, Navy 31. What happens? Caden Veltkamp sacked for a loss of 3 yards. FAU would never recover. 49-yard attempt from Garrison Smith is no good. Navy gets the ball back, heads all the way down the field, and Bryce Langston ends up coming up with a big play. Quarterback hurry on Blake Horvath. Another turnover on downs. You take over at your own 19. It's still 21-13. Caden Veltkamp on 1st down. 10 seconds left in the quarter. Hooks up with Dom Henry for 22 yards, and he has the ball punched away from behind. And Navy recovers, and this was the start of the slide. This was the issue right here, because Navy would take over. It only took them 3 plays to find the end zone, and that was the game right there. Surely you feel like, all right, you're only down 2 scores, but just Robbie, from a feel standpoint, that was it. That was it right there.
Yeah, those are those killer type of plays, right? I mean, even, the offense can struggle. It's one thing, but you can't hurt yourself. You can't have drop passes that lead to interceptions. You can't have plays like that. I mean, obviously it was a good play by the Navy defender. But if it wasn't for some late fourth quarter heroics there from Zach Gibson and the special teams unit, it was really kind of almost a return of the death quarter, although FAU did put together a nice long drive there in that fourth quarter. It was just, you go fumble, Navy touchdown, interception, Navy touchdown. And then after you put together a nice drive, long touchdown for Navy. So, I don't know, it's like the last 3 games, you go Memphis, USF, and then this one, they've had, like, it just seems like they collapse late. And, obviously you can't have a perfect effort the entire game. That'd
Sure.
be the ideal scenario. But got to find a way to keep generating those plays late in the game. And like Alex said there, the offense has to help the defense out, because you can't be perfect. So, yeah, that fumble right there, when you had a big play to start that drive, and then it's just downhill from there. So, got to find a way to limit those turnovers, not forcing them as much on the defensive side of the ball as you would like. So, can't add to that on the offensive side of the ball. Turnover differential is a stat that's kind of telling. You turn the ball over more than your opponent consistently, probably going to lose games.
Florida Atlantic, if I'm not mistaken now, is minus 13 in turnover margin this season. That is bottom 5 in the country. That you're not going to win at all doing that. Like, you're just not. I don't want to. I don't want it to seem like we are piling on the offense, but the numbers don't lie. The sequences don't lie. The eyeballs don't lie. The tangible evidence doesn't lie. And I think Alex in the chat, he's pretty accurate when he says the offense has let the defense down in games against the better competition. You look at Memphis. Why was the reason that FAU was able to get itself within a score in the fourth quarter? It's because of a strip sack that gave FAU an incredibly short field to get the touchdown, to pull to within 5 at that juncture, okay? USF last week, Florida Atlantic end of the second quarter, beginning of the third quarter, consecutive stops, a chance to get even closer to USF, to pull yourself to within a field goal of USF, and the offense just can't do anything with it with negative plays. And then that really, really shone, unfortunately, brightly yesterday, where, again, the score stayed 21-13 from the end of the second quarter, midway point of the second quarter, all the way through the beginning portion of the fourth quarter. It's really difficult to lay a lot of this on the shoulders of the defense when you have an offense like this that we've seen be so incredibly potent. Florida Atlantic total offense in the conference is 6th, okay? FAU is at 427.4 yards per game after yesterday, all right? Florida Atlantic, though, in scoring offense is 8th at 30.3. North Texas, they have 495.8 yards per game in the conference. That's tops in the league. They have 48 touchdowns. USF, total offense, 48.7. They have 38 touchdowns. 477 yards per game for Navy. They have 35 touchdowns. Memphis, 439.1 yards per game. They have 36 touchdowns. FAU, 427.4. They have 28 touchdowns. So that tells you a lot right there. FAU is gaining yards, moving the football, but the upper tier of the league is finding the end zone, putting 6 on the board. Florida Atlantic at a much lesser clip than those teams I just mentioned, who, again, are all happening to be in a spot to compete for an American Conference championship. FAU's offense is right in the conversation, right in that stratosphere, except they don't score touchdowns like the other teams do. And I think that tells a lot of the story for what's been holding back FAU, at least a major contributing factor.
Yeah, I think the offensive struggles also, it's tough, but it's tough to find exactly where the issue is because, you're obviously, we've mentioned the run game. The offensive line has dealt with injuries in different spots all year. You go back to Jacavian Nonar's injury early in the season. Now it's Atkovich, and they've trying to find different ways to shuffle. And, I don't think that's helped. You dealt with some injuries at wide receiver at times, and it took some time to get Mike Kirch going, and then so they've had different struggles at different times. And I think right now the two big issues of lack of run game and injuries on the offensive line have really kind of hampered this offense to a point we haven't seen yet up until the last couple of weeks. And so, that's the bye week can help them with those injuries, but they have to if they can't figure it out now, I don't know if they'll have enough time to kind of do that. Other than right now. So they gotta get right here. They gotta get healthy. They gotta get everything where they're back to a point where they were early in the season. It's not like the offense is anemic. You mentioned the yardage. So
no,
gotta have just gotta find a way to capitalize on your possessions. And I think getting everyone back, getting a week full of practice in there where you're not, preparing necessarily for a game, but you can focus on yourself a little bit. I think that'll help a lot. And at least if it doesn't, that's a problem. But yeah, I don't think the defense is to blame right now. I don't think Caden Veltkamp also is to blame for the offensive struggles. I think there's a lot of different factors that go into it. But can't turn the ball over in situations like we saw last game. I think when there's ulterior struggles like the run game or the offensive line, can't hurt yourself, can't have missed passes, got to make the most out of your situations. And it's tough asking Caden to try to be perfect, but that's kind of what they need in the current situation of the offense as a whole.
Yeah, and it's not just the turnovers, and I would argue that probably 4 turnovers on the year, Caden Veltkamp, that's not on him. Like, these things are going to happen, and this interception number gets inflated vastly by the opener against Maryland. That's the one that has this number ballooned to where it actually is. Now, it's the negative plays, the sacks, the penalties. FAU has not been especially good because of the lack of run game. FAU has not been especially strong if they're in negative yardage situations, if they're 3rd and 12 or 2nd and 15 or even 1st and 20. You're having to throw your way back into a first down situation, and teams know exactly how to defend that now. I mean, you're gonna have 2 high safeties, and you're gonna send the linebackers back into coverage. You have shown that with a basic rush, without a blitz, 3-4-man rush, you can get to the quarterback. That's also not helpful. It eliminates some of FAU's options, their safety valves, if you will, to gain back that yardage lost with those mistakes because of that confluence, what I just laid out right there. And you're starting to see the anatomy of what I'm sure is just the apex of maddening for Zach Kittley, and why those negative plays end up hurting so much. So this is a reality for FAU. Dark says microphone producing a terrible static noise. I haven't heard that, nor have I heard it from anybody else. If that's the case, I apologize. We'll continue to try to rectify that. Appreciate you watching and tuning in. Now, but I want to take a look at what's ahead here, just from a big picture standpoint. But if you're watching right now, if you're on YouTube, if you're on X, I'm curious to know, just in one sentence, what is the identity of this FAU football team to you? How would you articulate what you believe is the identity of this FAU football team? Just one sentence, because we don't need a dissertation. We don't need a paragraph. Certainly don't need an essay. Okay, I don't need a main idea. Don't need a body. Don't need a conclusion. All that, bringing you back to second grade. But just one sentence. What do you believe the identity of this football team to be? I'm putting you on the spot here, Robbie. For you, if you could use one sentence, and you can use some commas here, what do you believe the identity of this football team is? Keeping in mind that we're 8 games in, so this is more than enough body of evidence to give our impression of what we think this team is.
You know, it's a tough question to kind of break down, because they've had different identity issues at times, right? I mean, I think in some games they were sloppy. I think in some games they just didn't have, enough going on the defensive side of the ball, pressure-wise or run defense. That hasn't been an issue as of late. So I think what I'm going to say right now is intriguing but inconsistent. That's going to be my identity. I don't know if that's a correct identity, but that's going to be my phrase for how.
This is your opinion. There's no wrong answer.
Right. That's what I'm going to say. Intriguing but inconsistent, because there are things that intrigue me. Right. I mean, I think some weeks the offense has looked really, really good. I think Caden Velkamp has looked like one of the better quarterbacks in the country. I think Zach Kittley's offense has looked exactly as described. And then other weeks, it's been a struggle. Struggles to the point that Zach Kittley has admitted he's never had in his career. And on the defensive side of the ball, I think some weeks they've made plays. Brett Dewhurst did first time against an option defense, putting together 4 straight stops. That'd be a tough statistic. I need my guy from Tulane, Isaac Popper. He'd be able to pull that up in like 10 seconds working for ESPN now. But anyway, that's the type of stat I need to see. First time defensive coordinator putting together 4 straight stops against Navy. That's a big like positive right there. But at the same time, there's missed assignments. There's some struggles with penalties. So that's where I'm getting at here with intriguing but inconsistent. And honestly, that's not a bad place to be. You're not dead in the rights. I'm sorry, Charlotte, but I don't think they're saying anything about what's going on with their first year head coach right now is intriguing. I think week after week they find new things where they're just like, whoa. So that's not where where FAU is at right now with their first-year head coach and Zach Hitley. I think there's still intrigue. I think you can still get to a bowl game, which it's been a long time since we've been this late in the season with bowl game hopes. It's taking me back to like Willie Taggart's like last season.
Well, no, you remember 2023 FAU after they beat USF, they ended up being they were 4-4 at the time.
That's right.
And you look like, man, this is going to be great. And then they go to UAB, they lose late, and then it was just falling off a cliff. FAU lost out the rest of the year.
You mentioned that. That is the difference. What I have seen this season with FAU, if that 2023 team, for example, lost the FIU game early in that season, I don't know if they would have bounced back and won 2 conference games early in the season. And that is not a diss to the players at all on that team. I think that's more a reflection of the preparedness of the staff to have those guys bounce back. And it's probably why that staff is no longer in charge. So the bounce back ability, the in-game adjustments, the week-to-week adjustments, I think that has been much better with this current staff on both sides of the ball, on special teams, everywhere. But that can't stop now. They need to. They weren't able to bounce back this week. It's all right. You're playing Navy. Like you mentioned, they won 10 straight games. Week before you're playing USF, they've got, and the Athletics just said their roster is worth $10 million. So those are 2 games that you got to chalk up and move on from. But everything is in front of you. You can still bounce back and really turn this into, instead of saying inconsistent, they can finish the season on a hot streak. And then all of a sudden, intriguing is the only word you're going to say about this FAU team headed into year 2. But it's up to them to finish strong.
Our guy Christian in the chat, I'd say inconsistent is the right word to use, Rob. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the fallback word. I think inconsistent.
That's an easy way out.
Yeah, right. That's you can tell Christian just woke up. Like that's to the extent that he's bringing the analysis. But he's right.
Yeah,
it is inconsistent. Here's my. Because again, and it's unfair. I had several hours head start on this because I was just bus ride. It was about 25 minutes from Annapolis to BWI. We get on the plane. It was like a just over 2-hour flight, and I was thinking a lot about what the identity of the team is. Elaine used to talk about it a lot. From a basketball standpoint, Dusty used to talk about it a lot, having an identity. You remember the Final Four year, FAU was number 1 in Ken Palm on offense and on defense. Like that was FAU's identity. Dusty May was always religiously checking the Ken Palm ratings after every single game because his and the team's main goal was to be number 1 in both categories. And obviously that translated into the NCAA tournament as well. But a balanced offensive team, an efficient offensive team with an overwhelming defense. That was the identity of late Dusty May era basketball. Lane Kiffin, it was overwhelming run game, opportunistic defense. That was the identity that Lane Kiffin put out there. And you see that now with Ole Miss in the last couple of years with the defense, them bringing in a plethora of talent. Things have balanced out a little bit. And this Ole Miss team, I think, is, and last year's, more of a mirror to what FAU had with Lane Kiffin to a little bit lesser extent, but the same type of balance. This year's FAU football team, a lot of talent, a lot of explosiveness that does not play good complementary football. That is my identity of this FAU team. And complementary football, the offense doesn't pick up the defense, and the defense misses opportunities to pick up the offense, a.k.a. the turnover margin that we see here in 2025. So, again, this is my identity of FAU. A lot of talent, a lot of ability, don't play good complementary football. And I've heard Zach Hitley multiple times talk about complementary football, and you have to have that. Yep. You have to have that, especially in this league, if you're going to compete for a championship, especially in this day and age with roster turnover if you're going to go to a bowl game. What you lack in cohesion year after year with roster turnover, you can overcome with complementary football. And FAU just has not been able to figure that out. The most consistent part of this FAU team, this most consistent side of the ball, if you will, has been special teams. That's been the one that's most consistently put out a winning product, whether it's Garrison Smith, and we're not going to give him, mark him down for 49-yard field goal misses, right? Logan Lupo has been sensational as FAU's punter this year. Another punt inside the 5. What's that?
And Holder.
And Holder, yeah. He was a late entry.
Yeah.
He took over for Andrew Nelms, and he's been fantastic and to save the day on a couple of Garrison Smith field goals. And then Andrew Nelms, those onside kicks yesterday, he had 3 consecutive onside kicks that should have been FAU football every single time. Florida Atlantic got 1 recovery. He had his first one where it looked bizarre, where FAU's kickoff team seemed like they were sort of hesitant. They held up before they made contact with Navy. The second one was perfectly executed, and the third one was touched illegally just 2 yards before it got to the 45, and FAU had a beat on it, though. Andrew Nelms has been really, really strong. But this team does not play offense and defense good complementary football. What do you think about that identity that I put on this FAU football team through 8 games?
Yeah, they gotta help each other out on both sides of the ball. But I think that goes back to the lack of run game, right? I mean, Kidley's talked about it since he's got here. His offense is not pass only. I don't think his offense functions at its highest level unless he's got a complementary run game.
His Texas Tech offenses are proof of that. Case in point.
Yeah, and I mean, unfortunately, we don't have Taj Brooks. That is what it is.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think this offseason, I'll be interested to kind of see how they handle that running back room, because they didn't do a ton this offseason in there, and they didn't really have to, but looking back on it now, and hindsight is always 2020, but you probably would have liked another addition in there that could have, helped in this situation. And so I think this offseason, they may go out and try to, spend some money on a back that and maybe you're not going to go get a superstar, but somebody that can really give this offense a compliment to Caden Veldkamp. Caden Veldkamp, I'm speaking into the future here, so excuse me for doing that, but because the future in college football changes at every second.
Very unpredictable.
But I'm just speaking like long term. You need, if you have a star quarterback, you need a complementary run game with that. And I think even in this season, the one that we're currently in, like I was saying earlier in this podcast, if you get Jamari Sands back to his early season form where he was averaging 5, 6, 7 yards a carry, if you get Xavier Terrell back to a point where he was never a bell cow, I think that one game where he was the bell cow is probably has something to do with his current injury. I have no idea. But he's a compliment back. He is somebody you can get on first down. You can find him on a check down. He can make a defender miss and pick up a first down on a reception that was 2 yards. So they need that run game back to an early season form. And if they can get that complement to this pass game, where the pass game is excelled now, I even though there were some struggles this week, I still think Caden and the pass game as a whole has gotten better each week. If the offensive line can get healthy, if they can get that run game back, I think we can see this offense hit levels we haven't seen yet this season. But there's a lot of ifs in there, so we'll see if that happens.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. FAU, by the way, coming in or after last night's game, is at 102 rushing yards per game. Just a quick glance, and I haven't gone back through the entirety of FAU football, but I'm making a pretty educated guess considering that FAU had has had the Lane Kiffin era, which was a lot of Devin Singletary, a lot of Kareth White. I have checked back through 2018. You look back to the Charlie Partridge era, 2016. And then you had Alfred Morris, even in the 2011 year, where you went 1-11. Florida Atlantic had Alfred Morris. So I look back, and that 2011 year, 1-11 is pretty much the standard. And I hate to say it because Chris Newble, my broadcast partner, starter on that 2011 team, but that is my standard for problems. If you're having a comparison year to year, if FAU is struggling in an area, look back to 2011, and you're probably going to see the benchmark for low point in that spot. But at least going back to 2011, Florida Atlantic is on pace for its worst team rushing season in program history. 102 rushing yards per game. FAU in 2011 was just over 105. Florida Atlantic in the first year of Tom Herman was at 108. Everything else vastly superior to what FAU has done in the run game. So you bring up the run game. I do think there's a chicken and egg conversation to be had. How much is it on running backs and the injuries that have taken over that room, or the offensive line being completely unable to open up holes for the running backs? And I don't think anyone's going to sit there and publicly finger point, but it's not just running backs need to do more or offensive line needs to do more, but there's a correlation there. And there is one component of that has struggled more than the other in my mind. And I think that's more a question for Zach Kitley to answer. But I wish it was as simple as got to really work on the running backs or got to really work on the offensive line. But it's a mix of both. And I don't know if there's a majority, one or the other. But whatever it is clear that that's not working. And that has not worked pretty much all season. The offensive line isn't getting enough push, and the running backs don't have enough room or are not taking the right lanes to move the football on the ground. And FAU also has been put in situations where they've had to try to throw themselves back into games. That's certainly going to cut down on that as well. But FAU has not established a run game really at any point this year, for the exception of the UAB game. And in this era of college football, you can't just throw 55 times and expect that you're going to compete for a conference championship. And that's Zach Kitley he never said, I want to throw 55 times in a game. It's unfortunately been sort of the way he's had to operate because of where FAU is set on the scoreboard and where FAU has been lacking on the offensive side, and that's on the ground, and it's not even close.
Yeah, the simple solution, unfortunately, in today's college world is a donor needs to come in with, I think, $6 million, and then you can buy a whole new line and a running back, and there's your solution right there. Now, Unfortunately, that's not where we're at. If we were, maybe things would be a little different. But they do have to just try to find a solution right now. I mean, we can't worry about that future. Right now, they can still make it work here. The question is what are they going to try to do? We saw Mauricio Hines sub in at right guard this week. Both Kavian Onar and Daughtry Richardson each gave up 3 pressures and 2 sacks this week against Navy. I don't know if Zach Kitley would make changes in terms of benchings on either side of the ball. But in terms of trying to get that run game going, you got to try to do something. And
he inserted Mauricio Hines. I mean, that was part of the evaluation during the course of the week and coming off the USF game. Yeah. Give Mauricio Hines a shot at left guard. I don't know exactly how he's going to end up grading out after the film is analyzed, but I think you've already seen a little bit of maybe we need to try some different personnel in certain areas.
To me, yeah, I think guard is important. You'll get Akovich back. It's just interesting to see what they kind of do at tackle. They had success when they had Scarlett Jean at left tackle at some point in this season, earlier in the season. And so, there are some shuffles they can try to make here and get things going. We've seen them try, in terms of the running back room, we've seen them try to get Ethan Irvin going over the past couple of weeks. So I think that, this bye week we'll see more changes than we've seen earlier in the year, maybe, because they're like I said, if they don't come out of this bye week with new juice, a new rhythm, they're not going to have enough time for that afterwards, because Tulane looms, a UConn team that's going to be fired up looms, and ECU in the last game of the season is just brutal because they are going to come in with that high-powered offense as well. And so, nothing's easy. Nothing's easy here down the stretch. So got to find a way to make some adjustments here. And, they have been doing it, and they're just going to have to do it again.
It is clear to me that FAU has enough to compete with the upper tier of this conference because they've shown it. Memphis, USF, Navy. You get a shot at Tulane. And Tulane isn't nearly as explosive an offensive power as Navy is, as USF is, as Memphis is. They're really strong defensively. But FAU is enough to hang. FAU, the difference between that upper tier I just mentioned, and put North Texas in the mix as well. The difference between that group and FAU is that Florida Atlantic can't find ways to do it all 4 quarters, whereas North Texas has, whereas USF has, whereas Memphis has, whereas Navy does. FAU hasn't been able to do it for 60 minutes of football, but there is enough there to live in the same zip code, maybe not in the same neighborhood, but in the same zip code as all of those other teams. Now, USF losing to Memphis yesterday, that's wild. And maybe, just maybe, Alex Golesh should have spent more time focusing on his team and his play calling and his feel for the game, when to be aggressive and not, and when to take timeouts, as opposed to focusing on FAU and its coaches and how they handle disconcerting signals from the week before. Maybe, just maybe, Alex Golesh, your priorities should have been a little bit better sorted out going into that Memphis game. That's one thing. And then two, you've got Navy and North Texas next week in Denton, right? And then you have the very next week, USF going to Navy. You've got Memphis taking on, is it North Texas next week? Memphis and Memphis and hold on. Let me make sure.
No, I think I saw it earlier.
No, Memphis is at Rice, and then Memphis has Tulane the following week after that.
You want the Memphis fan base to explode, lose to UAB, beat USF, and then lose to Rice. That fan base would explode. But yeah, no. Navy and North Texas. Next week's going to be an interesting week. I think the winner of that game will probably, between Navy and North Texas, will probably get a championship game spot, unless they were to lose something stupid down the stretch. But you mentioned North Texas, and I watched that game, and they've just been able to hit a lot of home run balls that FAU's offense hasn't. They've turned a lot of those short screens, so whether it's a tunnel screen, running back screen, whatever they've been able to turn those into big gains, 70-yard touchdowns. I mean, a lot of their plays come yards after catch, and we've seen that at times from FAU, but not necessarily in the short passing game. So that's something that I think would help the offense as well, as if they can turn some of those short passes into a little bit more bigger impact plays than they've been getting.
I mean, you just look at the offense with these two teams, just for comparison. North Texas, FAU actually has a better pass offense than North Texas by about 62 yards. Yeah, 62 yards. North Texas, though, has 400 plus more rushing yards than Florida Atlantic. And North Texas has 48 touchdowns to Florida Atlantic's 28. That's the difference between the North Texas offense and the FAU offense. North Texas has a better run game, and North Texas gets into the end zone at a much greater rate than Florida Atlantic does. Similar weapons, similar style of offense, similar talent, but the end result has been wildly different, and that tells the entire story. Want to leave with this. We're going to cover it more Monday Night Live tomorrow, Beer Garden, Boca Raton. But you have just gone through your most treacherous stretch of the season. There are a lot of teams in the league, and still to be seen, it could be even the top contenders. Don't win against Memphis, don't win at USF, don't win at Navy in the same season. That was always going to be an incredibly tough ask for Florida Atlantic at this point in its program trajectory, right? That was always going to be a tough ask. So now you have a bye week. You have 4 games to win 3. You have 4 games to win 3. That is the objective to get to bowl eligibility. 3 of those 4 are at home. This is as much on you as it is on them. Your last remaining road game is at Tulane in 3 weeks' time. Everything else is at home. Homecoming against Tulsa. UConn comes in. They've already lost to Rice, a team that you beat on the road. And then East Carolina comes in to your place to close out the regular season. So if FAU fans are saying, oh, I'm frustrated, this stinks, not going to a bowl game again. Wait, you're not holding up your end of the bargain. If you're not headed out there, if you're not helping provide a home field advantage, if you're not in the seats supporting with FAU, there's still a very clear path to bowl eligibility. You have 3 wins you need out of 4, and it just so happens 3 of your final 4 are in Boca Raton. That right there, get out and support and stop moaning, stop looking for excuses, stop complaining, and get your ass out there. That's as plain as I can say it.
I say this on my podcast. I'm like, I will never complain if I don't get any likes or my articles don't get any views if the stadium is full. If the stadium is not full, I better see our social media. If you're gonna be sitting at home, you better be interacting with our content. But yeah, I agree 100%.
I don't give a damn if anybody listens to me the rest of the year on the Florida Atlantic Sports Network. Get to that stadium. Be a part of the solution. Flat out, plain and simple. Right. You need 3 wins out of 4, and you have 3 home games. I mean, that's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, get in there. And, this is the good weather type of the time of the year, too. It's no longer – it'll start to cool down a little bit. Hopefully we get some night kickoffs in there. It'll be real nice in there if we get some night kickoffs in, like, November, late October range, or late November range. I think that the home schedule here down the stretch really provides a chance for the fans to make an impact, which you love to see. Give them a shot, get rowdy. We don't need to be one of those schools with the tarps off section. That's not us. We're not doom and despair. You guys want to go crazy? Do it in another way. Maybe if for whatever reason bowl game eligibility goes out the window, then we'll bring the tarp discussion. But for now, this needs to be a crazy student section, and I need the locals to pop out too. I think the last home game I heard and saw they were doing a lot to get local elementary schools out there, local youth teams, whatnot. The credit to the whoever is in charge of that, because I think that's what I've been saying for years now. Is you gotta build up that fan base from when they're young, get them before they become a fan of one of those other schools by association. Get them to the games, get them to be Owls fans if they're from Palm Beach County. Pack the stadium in any way they can. And also I don't know how you'll probably talk about this tomorrow, but basketball season's here as well.
That's right.
Florida Tech on Thursday. Happy to be back in the alley for some hoops. So and then following week, big game, Boston College. So a lot going on in the FAU athletics world, and a lot of chances for the fans to kind of get involved and get in the stadium and get active. So I want to see it. Let's go.
One thing off that, the elementary school kids are great. It's great to have the local kids out there because, like you said, you need to, for lack of a better word, indoctrinate them at a very early age. But if you're one of those that likes to complain to me on social media as you sit with Cheez-It crumbs on your lap in your extra bedroom in your South Florida home, let that be. There's plenty of time for you to do that. Get out to the stadium. Just get out to the stadium. I'm trying to be as blunt and as clear as humanly possible. Brush the Cheez-It dust off your pants and get to Flagler Credit Union Stadium. You have 3 home games out of 4. If you hold serve at home, which you should be able to, this team's capable of doing it, then you go to a bowl game. And then I will help you. I'm not going to pay for it, but I'll help you set up transportation options to get to the bowl game.
I'll tell you this: if you go to the game and you're one of those Cheez-It people, and if you can prove to me that you're at the game, I'll give you the press box Wi-Fi password so you can still send angry tweets at Ken.
All right, perfect. Yeah, that's a good idea. Actually, that's Robbie Lastella doing it for the fans. Robbie, appreciate you as always, and no day after next week, but we'll talk to you again. Post Tulsa, post homecoming, okay?
Indeed, Florida Tech this Thursday. Another reason, by the way, to come out and show Coach Jacobs, the new players, some love there in the first only exhibition.
The only
fans will be able to see.
Yep.
Thanks as always, Ken. Take care.
All right, Robbie Lastella, New Era Preps, and he joins me every single Sunday day after. I want to thank Robes Law Group, personal injury lawyers, ROBES, RobesLawGroup.com. Bye week coming up for FAU football. Then you have Monday Night Live, Beer Garden Boca Raton at 6 o'clock this Monday. Myself, Damon Arnett, right off of Federal there at Beer Garden. We give out our position awards from the game against Navy, and we're going to look ahead, a little bit of basketball, a little bit of football as well. I'm Ken LaVicka. We'll talk to you next time. This has been the Florida Atlantic Voice. Bye-bye.